Paige Williams. She is the founder and CEO of Delaware Sensory Museum. We have Brandon Cherry, Director of IDD Services at OneWell. We have Eric Williams, Founder and Executive Director of Project Elijah, Empowering Autism and Unique Abilities Mobile Assist. We have, I lost my space, Isabel Katz, and she is the Family Resource Coordinator at Elwyn. And then, of course, Laura Sibbald McAnulty, Executive Director at Neurodiversity Employment Network of Philadelphia. So we don't have to do introductions because I gave such a fabulous introduction to each one of you. But we want to go into the first question, and that is, what does Build With Us means in your work? Is it on? You got yours? Oh, click it up. There we go.
Yeah, okay. So, sorry about that. Hi, as Jamiel mentioned, my name is Laura McAnulty. I'm the Executive Director of Neurodiversity Employment Network. I'm also a neurodivergent individual, so I do have the tendency sometimes to have the shiny object mentality where my brain will take me on a little bit of a tangent, so bear with me if that happens. But with the question being, like, what does it mean to build for? Is that the first question, to build for us?
Well, build with us. What does this mean in your work?
In my work, to build with us?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I skipped. I think there was a build for us question before.
Oh, yeah.
I think the build with us question for NEN, we are a neurodiversity chamber of commerce. So from my organization very specifically, when you're thinking of building as a collective or building pipelines, you're looking at what each organization, what each individual's lived experience, what each employer's experience and what they bring to the table. Like, all of those things have value because they're unique. Right? Every neurodivergent experience is unique, and so when you're developing policies, procedures within a company, whether it's for onboarding, whether it's retaining your top talent, whether it's looking at leadership opportunities, there are uniquenesses. There's innovation to each of those experiences, and so it's important that that comes through for each organization. So building with us really means like taking each of those experiences. So I'll turn it over because I can keep babbling.
Sure, good afternoon everyone. To me it means building from the inside out, taking our real life perspectives, being really transparent, and bring that realistic perspective to what it is which a mission serves. So just exploring that, I think what that resonates by the basics is passion. Passion to serve a population that you live with, so.
Good afternoon, my name is Brandon from OneWell Healthcare. Jamiel also did not mention we graduated from the same high school, Central High School in Philadelphia. So
259 in the building.
Shout out to Central.
259.
Yes, 270. But building with us to me means keeping our clientele and their families included. Sometimes we make decisions from, the back end, and we're looking at the bottom line, we're looking at paperwork, we're looking at regulatory compliance, but we really need to keep them included and keep them a part of the conversation. It's critical, and it makes us better and stronger as well. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. For me, Build With Us as a founder of a startup is quite literal for me, because as we are developing our project, which is building an immersive sensory play museum and community hub for caregivers and families, I have to often remind myself that I'm the mother of an autistic child. I am not autistic, and so I cannot build from my own lens. I have to constantly always seek out opportunities to put myself in the shoes of those that are, or allow their insight to lead us. And so one of the things that we've done through this project is seeking out those voices that represent from all aspects of the spectrum, from the individual, but then also from their caregivers as well, because they are the ones that can tell us best what needs to be in this space, and we don't want to build anything that ends up being more of a harm than it was a benefit.
Yeah, if I could just add, as a social worker, that sort of background, you're always coming with the perspective of client autonomy, self-determination, and I think that really is what this is in a nutshell, is, making sure that the people that we are working with are the ones that are served best by all the programs and all the things that we implement.
I'll just put in what that means to me. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with Governor Shapiro, and if anybody has taken that drive out there, it's not the best drive in the world. But what I did was I rode through the communities instead of taking an expressway. And the reason is because I need to understand how families are actually living. So I'm coming from Philadelphia, but I want to be in a position to represent families throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and quite frankly, all across the nation and the world. And sometimes I think we don't put ourselves in that atmosphere. We sometimes speak from the outside perspective, but when's the last time you actually sat with those individuals who are going through the struggles every day, whether they may be caregivers, parents, or even self-advocates? I have 3 friends that are autistic adults, and I love them to death. And it gives me a perspective to really talk for them and to really connect with other self-advocates that maybe aren't as a talkative or aren't in a position to advocate for themselves. So I think building with us means you stay in the trenches, as they say. You don't forget where you came from, or you don't forget about the people in which you're trying to represent. And I believe myself and everybody up here, we try to do that every single day in our work.
I think what's interesting with that, Jamiel, if you don't mind my adding on, is that you separate the idea of intention and having a good intention to do something, and respect that and understand that, with the idea that you do sometimes need to hear that direct feedback on this is or is not working, or you may have intended this to do X, Y, and Z, but maybe it's not delivering in the way that you wanted to. And we see that with employers having a good intention with their hiring or inclusive hiring practices, or with their onboarding, like, oh, we do like these things, and isn't that great? And it's, yeah. Yes, but maybe there's some other elements that if you're listening internally to the members of your organization, they can really tell you, like, actually, this was hard for us, so we can make a pivot, or we can make a shift. So I think it's important also to not let that, your intention, prevent you from hearing feedback that you really need to hear.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into our next question, is where do anybody here, and you can all answer, where do you see systems building for instead of with the community? Healthcare. Healthcare. And I work for a healthcare, so I can say that. But healthcare.
Yeah, so in terms of building for, like I mentioned before, sometimes we're making these decisions behind a screen and we're not engaging in our communities, like Jamiel says. At OneWell, where I work, we are across the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have 25 offices across the Commonwealth. So we have offices in Philly and Balkenwood, and we also have offices in very rural area like Warren, Pennsylvania, which is about 7 hours away from here. So it's important for us to really engage with the community and learn, the different cultures and the different values that those communities have, rather than making those decisions from a corporate office. And those kinds of decisions are usually building for rather than with. So that's what we see in our experience.
And I think for me, I get to experience it on a daily, because my son is 27 on a spectrum. I'm leading an organization and trying to get out there in the community. So I'm not just writing administratively for RFPs or trying to make those connections. I'm actually out there serving. So, and I tell organizations sometimes, it's okay just to look at our RFP. I know that's the process, but come out and see what we do. That's one way to actually measure the impact of our children. I used to think that success was defined in numbers of attendees, but you could just have one and the impact that you could have on that one person, but they would never know that unless they come out. So I try my best to get them to come from behind their desk, pushing the pens and all of that, because I have to do that part too, And at the end of the day, I'm still a father of one with autism, 27, and if I would gauge it, probably have a kindergarten education at best. So I got to be his advocate as well. So none of that stuff stops, as you know.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot, though.
You can go ahead.
I would probably also add to that probably every space. For me, as a mother of a younger child, so he's 4, trying to find things for him to do in the community was one of our biggest struggles, whether that was taking him to libraries or places like Fun City and Sky Zone. There's so many attempts at what spaces try to do to create moments, minutes, an area, a nook, but I don't think oftentimes they have the full perspective of what is needed or required for an autistic individual, and they're just like, oh, you just need a quiet area, and they throw all this stuff in there, and it's like, this is actually overstimulating me. And so almost everywhere, I think, would benefit from having access to experts and or those that are actually autistic to lead the decision making when they're trying to implement things to support our community.
Great answer. Go ahead.
An example I've seen too in schools is, a lot of times professionals, again, having that interest to do good, are sometimes making assumptions about what a child needs. A lot of times I will see therapists making recommendations for like a communication device, and that might really fit what they see as the child's needs, but they haven't really engaged the family and understanding what is the family's routine, what are the practices at home, how can the sibling be, learning this device and helping to model. So what happens is then that device just stays in the child's backpack, and the impact is lost. So I think these things that we're thinking about are so beneficial to really making supports long-term and supportive to the individuals.
I think I'll go out of the box a little bit on this one. I was at a conference recently, and we were talking about AI, similar to we're here, EmpathyTech, we're seeing all of this amazing startups and different apps and different tools that are coming out, and it's wonderful. And one of the things that we talked about was how many of you have seen ads for how to write a good AI prompt? You could take a course, okay, and you've seen you can pay to take courses on this and all this stuff, and how to learn how to communicate directly and effectively with our artificial intelligence. And it got me thinking about how we're spending time building this skill to communicate with artificial intelligence. However, people aren't spending time figuring out how to communicate directly with the autistic community or the neurodivergent community. And it really kind of got me a little bit in this, there's now this whole industry, this whole building up of these conversations with artificial intelligence. And I think sometimes we get so excited by the novelty and the innovation, and we're gaining these new skills, but there's also this idea, it gives us, to me, an opportunity to reflect on what are the things that this buildup, this tech buildup is teaching us that we can reflect back into our own interactions and communications with individuals, with autistic individuals, with neurodivergent individuals. And so that's the idea of building. You're building for, yes, this tech build out, but also how is that reflected back into the community? And that's something that I was thinking about with this question.
Interesting point. I like that. I like that a lot. I want to go into this next question because I think all of us will have something to input. If you don't mind, I would like to go first because I want to give a tangible example for everybody to see the answer to this next question, and that's one practical way organizations can bring community voices in from the start. So to give you a little context, one, because the woman who actually started the conversation is to give me a chance. I see you out there. She's in the audience. Two, I'm going to keep my job, so I'm going to shout her out. But before I started working at CHOP, I was doing advocacy work on my own, and she found out about the work that I was doing through word of mouth. And I had an opportunity to present, just a regular guy, regular dad that's just trying to make a difference in the community for my son and individuals like him. And she stepped to me and said, I think we have a position for you if you're interested. And I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. This is what I would love to do. And, you know, to give you a little bit of context, there were some guidelines that I needed to fulfill, and I didn't meet those criterias. And they removed those criterias because they knew that I can do the job. That's at work. So a lot of people look at me and my position and what I do, and they're like, oh, we need 15 of you. And I think healthcare organizations need to get parents, caregivers, self-advocates who are passionate about making a difference in the community and give them a try to sit at the table, give them a seat at the table to intermingle with researchers and scientists, to talk to organizations, to do presentations, things such. I think that's really where the work we need to do. But I just wanted to tell you guys, I'm a living example of what that question, what that answer to that question is. I definitely want to hear from everybody else.
I can jump in there. I think one of the things about building with, like you're saying, empowering those caregivers to be leaders at the table. Our colleague who's not here today, Isabel Baskerville, she, along with one of her other parent advisors within Elwyn, has created a training called Ditch the Diapers, which is one of our most successful trainings that we offer to families. It's an info session all about potty training and supporting neurodiverse children and learning those skills. And I just think that is another great example of, you know, their expertise, their sharing. I mean, Isley will describe those sessions as potty training support groups because they're very emotional, and it's a very intimate experience. And I think the approach that she and her colleague Jen Fisher bring to that space is something that us as professionals could really never do. And so just sort of also learning as professionals to kind of give the floor to the people who are the experts in this space, and that really builds the trust and supports the community where it's at.
So many of you are probably providers. We're very reliant on Sandata, HHA Exchange. We recently developed our own EVV system called Smart EVV. But the point of this is that we had meetings about it, we did an implementation and rollout, and a family member that has been with OneWell since the beginning for 4 or 5 years. They have a son with severe autism, 2-to-1 care. She called me and said, I'm very disappointed. You didn't include us in the process. We weren't in the, we didn't give our feedback. You just implemented this new system that now we're expecting this affects directly our son's life. So I took that feedback very seriously, and it's critical to include those that are not only providing the care, but their family members and community members as well to make those core decisions. So.
To add to that, I would say also inviting the voices of those that feel far removed from the conversation into the conversation. So for us, one of the things that we found would help to move our mission forward was to find sectors that wanted to learn more, but they didn't necessarily know where to find that information. And so creating space for that through events and through opportunities for that conversation to be facilitated. And so for me, that helps us not just preach to the choir, right? Because we can talk to our community all day long till we're blue in the face about what we need and what we feel that we lack. But to your point that you shared earlier, it's really about us helping other people understand what those barriers look like and how can you be a support in this mission. And then beyond that, we've started to offer workshops for childcare educators for them to get a better understanding of, what they need to be looking for, signs that they need to be looking for, things that they could be doing in their childcare facilities to better support the children that they work with. And that's called our Basics of Autism or Beyond Autism workshop. And so again, just bringing in individuals that don't have a good understanding, helping them get a better understanding, and then also equipping those that want the supports and the trainings that they need.
I love what you were saying so much. And I have so many thoughts on this topic, and I think I'm going to try to condense it down. My brain's not always good at that. But But my first thought in engaging with a community, right, is you have to know your purpose. Like, you have to know very, very clearly what it is that you're trying to do, or what the purpose of your organization is, and what your mission is, because we're all up here representing, you know, different organizations that have like common values, but we have different missions, right? So we go about how we do things differently, but we collaborate. Which I think is awesome. I think that's honestly really wonderful about Philly. Like, the Philly community is just so supportive of each other. And so if you're engaging with a community, know what it is that your purpose is. Like, what am I trying to do with my organization? What am I trying to do with an event or with a training? And then how am I soliciting information from people to get the feedback that I need to, you know, develop content, or to develop a plan, or to bring people together? You know, we're a networking group. What's important is that people are making the connections that they need, and so I need to get feedback. And the other piece that you talked about with our community, sometimes we are in an echo chamber, we talk to each other. And I think you really have to be purposeful in talking to people outside of just this community to get additional feedback, because one of the beautiful things about the neurodivergent community is that there's so much intersectionality, and there's so much like difference reflected across socioeconomic status, across race, across gender, across sexual identity, like all sorts of things. And so I think it's really important that if you know what your purpose is and you know what you're trying to accomplish, that then you're very, very deliberate in your outreach to make sure that you are representing the community that you're in. So for an employer network, we're representing small business, mid-size, large, entrepreneurs, nonprofits, you know, and like I mentioned, all of the different other groups that are represented within the neurodivergent community. And so I think like that, to me, when you're trying to do outreach, it's not just this blast, right? Like, it has to be really, really purposeful, and you have to do that self-reflection.
Yeah, I think for me, leading the organization for 21 years, it's just about being consistent and knowing what that is. And we had the same mission statement, safe, nurturing, and judgment-free environment throughout the 21 years. So just try to stay on those principles, yet serving. Sometimes we oftentimes get frustrated about, we want everybody to come and we think we have this secret sauce, which may not be the case, but that's measured by what's internal. So you may not always get that back then. And then, you know, looking at it 21 years ago, autism wasn't talked about in our communities. And with my population, the low to moderate income demographic, we was in denial. And people would come shadow more than they would participate. You know, so, but just about a consistency over that, some that shadow with us 21 years ago, they're just now coming. But they see the effectiveness prior to COVID. We actually grew 3 times our size during COVID, and then now kind of positioned us really well, but it took 2 decades to get there. So just remain to be consistent and love the population that you're serving.
So many gems being dropped here. I'm hating Mary looking at me. She's putting up fingers. But we're out of time, unfortunately. I want to respect our next presenter up here. You know, I would say one thing is that I also, too, am a strong advocate for telling parents and communities that they must meet us head on. Events like this, right? Communities must be able to come out to get this information, to mingle, to be educated. So the onus is not just on one particular side, but it takes all of us to come to the table and to talk about these things and really work on them together. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm very passionate about giving out that information, as I too was a parent that was very reluctant to sit at the table or be absent from the table. So I want to thank the panelists here today. Once again, real inclusion isn't for communities, but with communities. Let today be a reminder that collaboration, listening, and shared power lead to lasting change. Each one of you are my family, so I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you being up here. Thank you.